Hello, welcome back again. Today it's all about fixing, designing, remastering, that sort of thing. It's a day where we look at what has been done before and see if we can do a better job. I mean, that's really what today is all about. I'm really hoping that people find this interesting. I think the AARAKOCRA is probably one of the more difficult ones to do out of anything you could consider. I'm going to put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll. Also, I would suggest grabbing some food, some drink, making sure you are comfortable before I get started. And I'll be getting started fairly quickly because we do not have a lot of time. I have an hour at the most, and I have to get the job done by then. So given that's the case, it's very important that I get started fairly shortly. So now that you've got your food, your drink, and you are comfortable, let's roll into this, shall we? Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about tabletop role-playing games, and we are redesigning, fixing, remastering, doing some adjustments, modifications, home brewing, whatever you want to call it. We are adjusting and fixing the AARAKOCRA playable race for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. For those of you who are aware of what I do on this channel, I generally try to cover things that I think are interesting, and I'm not terribly interested in the unearthed arcana that Wizards of the Coast is doing. I'm much more interested in doing my own thing, and I encourage you to do the same. So what am I going to do with the AARAKOCRA, the playable race in Dungeons & Dragons 5e? Well, I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of whether you should allow AARAKOCRA in your campaign or not, because I see a place, and not every campaign should have AARAKOCRA in it necessarily. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying I can see a campaign where everybody in the party is playing a flying race, where essentially you would all have to have some sort of wings. So it's going to be, do I choose the flying pixie, or do I pick the flying AARAKOCRA, or is there something else? I don't know. So depending on your campaign, so I see this as fitting where it needs to. So I'm going to go over my goals very quickly. I want to keep the race design as simple as possible, so it's easy to understand and adjudicate, easy for players and for game masters. So that means me and my players, essentially. Make sure that the race and species has features that are biological rather than not being biological. This can sometimes happen with race and species and D&D 5e, where they bring in things that aren't really necessary for it, that don't really make a lot of sense. And then I'm not concerned with the race or species being balanced, just mechanically working the way that I think it should work. And we'll see how well we do with that. Anytime that dark vision comes up, I tend to reduce dark vision to 30 feet or remove it. That has not always been the case, but certainly if we were talking about dark vision in any way, I'm looking at sort of modifying that in some way when it's appropriate. There are some races adjustments we've made, like there are some races we've left at 60 foot of dark vision. Make sure that ability score improvements allow for choice and fit the biology of the race. I'm not looking to be really prescriptive around this, and I will show you what I mean. I've very much adopted the put things where you want to, but we'll adjust that a little bit as well. I want to certainly eliminate the short and long rest mechanics from race features and abilities. I don't think they have a place. If you've picked an ability or you've picked a race or species to play, and it has something that they can do, that thing should really work all the time. It shouldn't have a limited resource management process going on, as far as I'm concerned. But we'll see how we go with that. Removing, in particular, bonus actions and reactions to race and class features. I do not class features, but bonus actions from race features. I don't think they have a place, so I'm not a fan of the bonus action or even the reaction in most cases. Ensure that my home group likes what I've done and agrees with the changes, because we're going to use it in my home group. And then make sure that the race and species make sense to me, because I've got to deal with it. Ultimately, in the end, just like yourself, I've got to deal with it. So yeah, we'll see how we go. I'm going to have my chat, the live chat, up and running, so feel free to leave your comments. The YouTube machine has decided to change the format as to how a live stream is presented. And that's going to throw a great huge needle in the works for me because I can't see chat the way I normally do. So that's a little bit difficult. Anyway, let's go over and I'm going to share you the screen that I'm working with. And, by all means, put in your feedback and your comments. I'm not going to take on board everything that people have to say, but there's certainly an opportunity to remind me of things that I might not have thought about. And you never know. You never know. Anyway, here we go. The AARAKOCRA. I'm going to get rid of my hat because it is getting quite warm. The AARAKOCRA. Honestly, I think the AARAKOCRA is quite difficult as a playable race to actually figure out what to do with out of all the things that I got here. I've done a little bit of homework, not a lot. There are 2 versions of the AARAKOCRA, which complicates things. For me, ultimately the most important thing is the monster stat block for the AARAKOCRA in determining what I do with the AARAKOCRA. Otherwise, why would I bother? So this is one of the things I'm keeping in mind is, does a playable race or species fit the monster stat block that is proposed by D&D 5e, provided that stat block is suitable, okay? Okay, so ability score improvements. We'll start right there at the very beginning. I'm going to stick with what I've been doing in the past, which is, when you determine your ability scores, you get to increase one score by 2 and increase another different score by 1, or you can pick to increase 3 different ability scores by 1. And I think that dexterity is the one thing that stands out for the AARAKOCRA. I think that's sort of biologically tied into the fact that their bones will be hollow, that they will be quite light in frame, and because they are also a flying creature, they're probably going to be able to move a lot faster than everybody else. I mean, dexterity is probably a big factor for a bird, and you are basically just a big bird, right? So I'm going to put that in and leave that there. And I'll put a little question mark around here, but I will ask you that question. We'll see what people have. If you've got a different view, you're welcome to put it forward. Hashtag. That was power just about went. My lights just dimmed. Oh dear. I think we've got a bit of a storm going on, so it'll be interesting. What ability score do you think the AARAKOCRA, if I can get this to spell this out on my phone. I'm looking at my phone, so it's a different text size, so it's a bit hard. What ability score do you think the AARAKOCRA should have to increase? Sometimes we haven't worried about that. Sometimes we have. I think in this case, maybe I think it does fit, but we'll see how we go. All right, so I've put it in yellow as it's not locked in now for the first draft. Let's go through here. Creature type, you are classified as being human, humanoid, not human. That's fine. Size, medium, that fits the monster pretty much. I don't think we need to worry about that. Your walking speed. Now, there are 2 versions of this. One has a walking speed of 30 feet, which is in Monsters of the Multiverse, okay? And then, of course, your fly speed is reduced as well. Yeah, I think Dex is appropriate. Thank you, Fred Huber. Fred Huber's patron. Thank you for commenting. I appreciate it. And then there's Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, which has I believe your movement speed is the same for flying or walk. No, is it different? It's 25 feet. I'm pretty sure it's 25 feet. So your walking speed is 25 feet and your fly speed is 50 feet. Now, I know that Wizards of the Coast adjusted the AARAKOCRA and their fly speed. But here's the big thing that I struggle with turning this into a playable race. If you're going to take a monster and turn it into a playable race, and I have no problems with there being an AARAKOCRA, then it has to sort of reflect the AARAKOCRA. Now, if you look at the D&D 5e Monster Manual, you'll notice that on page 12, it states that they have a fly speed of 50 feet and a walking speed of 20 feet. Now, 20 feet really slows you down a lot. If you were walking alongside everybody else, okay, and you're trying to move from one place to another, you're going to hamper them. But if you're an AARAKOCRA, you're not going to fly unless you are required to do so. Like, you know, because you can't get up in the air. You can't flap your wings. You're in the middle of a dungeon. Really, the only time that an AARAKOCRA has a benefit is when there's space to flitter around, and you know, tight 5 foot you know, corridors and dungeons, and heck, even a 10-foot corridor. You know, if the ceiling is only up to 10 foot high, then you're not really going to be flying very far off the ground anyway. So it doesn't, yeah. So I think there's something to be said for looking at this. Is it 20 feet? Is it 25 feet? Is it 30 feet? I don't think 30 feet is a good idea. I think this is a nebulous area myself, and I will bold that. Hello Derp, how are you? Can the flight have some defining space restriction? The problem with doing a space restriction is I don't know how easy that is to implement into your game. If we're going to, I know where you're going with this, Derp. If we're going to include something like a space restriction for flight, we need to be very clear. If we can write it in one single sentence that it's absolutely crystal clear to a game master, dungeon master, and players how to adjudicate flight, then I think that's fair enough. Now, the wingspan of a AARAKOCRA, I did actually look it up in AD&D to see what the wingspan was, and it's quite big. It's not small. Yeah, I'm also all right with a walking speed that's slower than 30 feet because they can fly. You know, it's sort of the trade-off. Now you'll notice that I have two versions of flight here. One is because of your wings, you have a fly speed equal to your walking speed, and you can't use this fly speed unless you are wearing medium or light heavy armor. If you're wearing medium or heavy armor, you can't use it. Okay, so only light armor. Now, I know a lot of people will say, yes, but what if I want to play a flying AARAKOCRA in heavy armor? Well, you wouldn't. That's the thing, is that doesn't make sense for a flying creature wearing heavy armor. You know, weight is really important. And you'll say, okay, well, yes, but Fred, remember, it's fantasy, magic solves everything. And I think that you're kind of pushing the bounds too much. A flying tank can be done with a fly spell. I think that the new version of flight is frankly shit. Doesn't bear any resemblance to the actual monster itself. I think we're better to stick with 50 feet fly. If it's going to be an AARAKOCRA, otherwise let's call it the Red Robin. You know, don't call it an AARAKOCRA. It's not an red AARAKOCRA. Call it a gull. You're playing a gully, and that just happens to fly at whatever walking speed you have. So I think this first version of flight is complete rubbish, and we get rid of it. It's not because I'm trying to make the AARAKOCRA overpowered. It is because I think it should fall in line with the monster. Does it make sense? So we're going to keep going down here. So this here, I'm going to retain this bit. But as for how do we structure it, so if you have a fly speed, okay, because of your wings, because of your wings, you have a fly speed of 50 feet. To use the speed, you cannot be wearing medium or heavy armor. And I think we retain that. Okay. Now, if we're going to have a space restriction, here we go. Interesting to see here. What have you got here, Dirt? I'm going to have to keep refreshing my chat. Flight requires space to spread your wings. You need at least 10 feet horizontal and 10 feet vertical to utilize your flight speed. That's relatively... Yes, I think that's pretty reasonable, Dirt. If I have a look at the reference material from AD&D in terms of how the AARAKOCRA is sort of built, because it does actually mention the wingspan, we can sort of lock that down. Dirt, that's it. Roll it. I'd roll it, yeah. Can't fly if encumbered. Okay. I think that's reasonable. If you are encumbered, that would be a bad thing. I think what you're trying to avoid is just like the ferry being able to fly, but also carry passengers over from one place to another. And we're talking about like little gossamer wings. Being able to carry carry somebody might be a bit of an issue. So let's have a look here. I've got AD&D. This is second edition. This is the monstrous manual, and let's have a little peeky at how the AARAKOCRA's wings are structured before I take Derp's suggestion for flight. Okay. Oh, we've got a few people. Nathaniel Woods, hello. How are you, by the way? Steve Lee, how are you? Certainly, if it's carrying weight, it'll need to take off space, such as a swan. Again, we have to be careful about how complicated. I think if we're going to have flight, allow people to use it to carry stuff and be encumbered, then we need to keep it simple. So either you can fly and you don't have to worry about encumbrance, or you can't fly if you're encumbered, and that's it. I don't think there's anywhere else to go with this. I mean, a lot of people just don't use encumbrance anyway. Anyway, let's have a look at the AD&D wingspan and see what we have here, because I'm pretty sure it does state. Here we go. AARAKOCRA are about 5 feet tall and have a wingspan of 20 feet. About halfway along the edge of each wing is 8. Now, so this is part of the problem. 20 feet, that means that you need to be able to really spread your wings and have a lot of space. So I think part of the problem here is we won't be able to go with 10 feet horizontally. Vertically is not probably the issue, okay? But I think we're going to have to extend that 10 feet to about 20 feet, because the wingspan of an AARAKOCRA is quite a bit bigger than that. But your suggestion is noted. So what we will do is let's port over your suggestion into here and then see how it looks, and then go from there. Okay, we're just going to do a quick cut and paste job to make life easier. And so you know that question that you always get about, can my AARAKOCRA fly in the dungeon? Because I've had that question happen to me quite a few times. Well, now we've got to answer that question, don't we? Really. So let's do that. Let's deal with that now. It means that flight's going to be a little bit more detailed than it was before. Because of your wings, you have a flying speed of 50 feet. To use this speed, can't be wearing medium or heavy armor. You can't be wearing medium or heavy armor. Let's just put this at the end. I think we'll put this at the end. So let's cut this for those of you who do use encumbrance, and I'm sure that some of you do, but not everybody. Let's put that there. Right. Flight requires space to spread your wings. You need at least 20 feet horizontally and 10 feet and 10 feet of vertical space to utilize your flight speed. Okay, so that means that flying in a dungeon, unless the passageways are 20 feet wide, are just not going to be a plausible thing to do. Your space is limited, so you'll be walking. Okay, so we're going to be looking at this walking speed as like, what is the walking speed going to be? And for me, I'm inclined to go with the monster. I'm inclined to say you have a walking speed of 20 feet rather than 25 feet, just because of the way you're built. Yep. Is that a huge detriment to you? I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. But let me just keep going here. Now, talons. Anybody see any problems or things that I have not considered in flight or think are unreasonable? Now's the time to mention them so that I can review them if I need to, okay? All right, now let's go with talons. Talons, I've been thinking a lot about talons last night, and I've kind of come to the conclusion that I don't like the way that they have structured talons. There are two versions. There's the one in the Monsters of the Multiverse and the Explorer's Guide to Wildmounts, and frankly, I think the new version makes very little sense. Possibly what's going on here is they've decided this is an easy way to sort of become monk-like. Maybe that's what they were trying to do. I was trying to fathom, after looking at the biology of an AARAKOCRA, why would you be able to cause so much damage? Now, everybody else that is doing an unarmed strike is doing 1 point of damage plus their strength modifier. Personally, I don't think strength modifier or dex modifier is an issue. I think it should be either one. So for me, if I was going to be using this, I would actually structure it more like or dex modifier. And slashing damage, that's fine. I have no issues with that. As for the D6 rather than the D4, is this trying to turn, like again, as I said, is this trying to turn the AARAKOCRA into a monk-like character from the very get-go before even taking that class? And I was trying to think, well, their claws, what do they represent? Do they represent daggers? And I think, well, they feel like they're more like a dagger than a short sword, their claws. Okay, so the amount of damage. Then I thought, okay, well, the easy way is to look at the monster. How much damage does the monster do? And the monster does 1d4. It does a 1d4 plus 2. And the monster uses dex. If you have a look at how the stat block is working on page 12, the monster manual, you'll notice that they have allowed the AARAKOCRA to use dexterity. Their dexterity modifier, not their strength modifier for making the attack. And that is built into not only their attack, but also their damage. So I feel like what we need to do is trim back the D6. Okay. It's not necessarily the attack that you want to perform, but if you have no weapons, then it's going to be at least some benefit to you. I think what we do is we push this back to a 4, not a 6. Much like the original one, but we also need to tailor it in such a way that to make sure it's clear to people how this is going to work. So we're gonna take some of the old stuff, put it in some of the new stuff, and then expand it out to ensure that it's more in line with how the monster operates physically. Because right now I don't think it does. That means that your talons should be finessable. When you make an attack, should be using dex or strength, and if you're doing damage, you should be using dex or strength. I think we need to do that for it to work. Certainly if it's carrying weight, it'll need to take off. Yes. Hello, Steve. Doesn't it also get a peck attack? No, it doesn't get a peck attack. I thought this was rather amusing that you got a peck, you got talons, but you don't have a peck, and that's rather amusing too. So I think we can tie this together. Let's call this talons and peck. Or we can even call it talons and bite. Although I think peck is more entertaining. So this covers our bases, right? You have talons and a beak. And a beak. They can use to make unarmed strikes. Okay. You are proficient with a beak. That's not the beak. Try that again. You are proficient with talons. Proficient, obviously. Proficient with your talons and beak that can be used to make unarmed strikes. Okay, so we need to include this. When making an attack roll, you can use either dexterity or strength any hit when making attack rolls, I think that's right, attack rolls, you can use either dexterity or strength, any hit with the talons or beak deals 1d4 plus your strength or dexterity modifier slashing damage. Yes, I'm pretty happy with that. Instead of yes, that's fine. I think we can get rid of this now. I think that's how it probably needs to be worded. I don't know what people think about that, but I think that makes far more sense for the AARAKOCRA than doing what they've done in the past. It's a little bit more complicated, there's a little bit more wordy to it, but we've covered the fact that it really should be classified as a finesse attack, an unarmed strike. They're clearly going to be better at doing damage because they've got sharp claws or talons and they've got a sharp beak. Other than when somebody punches somebody, like there's only so much impact damage you can cause from just whacking somebody with your foot or your head or your fist. So when you can actually slash, then there's going to hurt a lot more. There's going to be a bit more blood, So I think that's going to work. Beak is piercing. No, I feel like their beak is not a piercing one. Now the reason being is the type of beak they have. There are beaks that birds have that are designed to just sort of drill in, okay, like a woodpecker, and then there is a beak that is designed to rip. And this is definitely, I feel like, because of the hook on the end, this is a ripping beak rather than a pecking beak like a woodpecker. So you're going to wind up with more slashing damage occurring than I think the slashing makes more sense than the piercing, frankly, for the type of beak that you're dealing with, because it's a beak like an eagle or a hawk or a predator. It's a predatory bird. Predatory birds rip and tear. That's more slashing than piercing. Does that make sense? Which is why I think I'm going to stick with it working that way. How are we doing for time? We're doing all right for time. Oh my gosh. Okay, Wally's checking out the monsters we made last week. Or the monster we made last week. And let's have a look here. Beak piercing. They give them the choice of talon or beak, not multi attack. Well, I have not stated that there's multi attack going on here. Let's make this clear. You'll notice you are proficient with your talons and beak and beak that can be used to make unarmed strikes. When making an attack roll, use either and hit. So you're not getting to use both. You're not getting multi attack. If you had more than one attack, so if you're like you've got extra attack, or you're a monk and you really want to use your beak and your talons, I suppose you could. But I don't think it shouldn't read as in any way does it look like you're getting multi-attack. You don't getting multi-attack. You get to choose either the talons or the beak as your action normally, and that's it. And that's probably the only time you were going to do this is when you're unarmed and you don't have a weapon. Because I would imagine that as a AARAKOCRA, you're going to have a javelin, a spear, or some sort of short sword, more than likely. Anyway. Do you keep the short lifespan and quick maturity? I think that's fine. I don't like the idea of when you have the lore and the concept behind a playable race that is kind of essentially a monster. I think changing that too much just messes with things too much. Are you actually playing an AARAKOCRA anymore if you change the lore of a monster? I've had this discussion with AJ Pickett. It's why AJ Pickett's quite hot on changing lore in D&D, because you essentially turn a monster that was a particular monster into something completely different by changing too much. Yeah, lifespan in 5e almost never comes up. Earlier tracking, it was important, yeah, but I think 5e, I wouldn't worry. Time, but a lifespan, it should be based on setting. Yes, again, Nathaniel, you make a very good point. AARAKOCRAs are going to work differently in your world than in somebody else's world. Yep. I use a calendar and weeks, months, downtime, probably not enough time for an old age to mature though. Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I don't think it's a big deal. You'll notice when I'm doing this, I have not included age as a factor. You might have noticed there's a couple of things I've left off the actual race and species. The only thing I'm really dealing with here are really the mechanics, nothing else. Yeah? Okay. Right, the next one. I would do the wind caller, which I think is one of the stupidest pieces of garbage I've ever seen. Frankly, I think wind caller is utter rubbish myself. But let's deal with languages, because languages is one of those things. Now, I was looking at AD&D, I was looking at 5e, the two versions, and I think what's come up is AD&D stated that you could speak AARAKOCRA and Orient, which is basically you can speak to birds. So this is one of those weird times where I'm kind of unsure exactly how to approach languages for this. As for common, there used to be a 10% chance that an AARAKOCRA knew common as well as a third language. Now, this is built in now that you just get 3 languages as an AARAKOCRA. You got common, AARAKOCRA, and then you get to speak with birds. Okay. So I'm sitting here and I'm just trying to decide how I want to do this, because I like the idea that you get some choice about what languages you know, because I feel like this is very locking you down to culture. AARAKOCRA, I suppose if you're brought up with AARAKOCRA, you would speak AARAKOCRA. I suppose that would be the case. Common, I'm not sold on. I actually feel like there should be at least some room for movement on this. And then the bird one, I'm still a little dicey as to what I want to do with this. Or any type of bird creature. Bird-like creature. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about this. We'll have a think about this a bit more. The going down here. So I've made a note, summon birds. So I'll make it clear that AARAKOCRA, there is nothing that suggests that AARAKOCRA summon birds to them just because they're a bird-like creature or humanoid. Okay, there's nothing in the law, there's nothing suggests that. I was just spitballing. For me, I'll come back to Windcaller because it'll probably be the thing I'll spend the most time on. Let's go down to languages and see what we've done before. I really want there to be some choice. What have I done with other languages? See, there's a lot of the languages section, it almost doesn't even feel like it's in the right place. And so I've made big adjustments quite often with this. I'm going to go here. Copy. Copy. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go back up. Back to AARAKOCRA. Paste. You can speak, read, and write. You can speak, read, and write one language of your choice. One language of your choice. And I'm going to get rid of common. If you pick common, you do. I'm actually I'm tempted to get rid of Orient as well, but yeah, this is a bit messy. This is a bit messy. Why I'm not quite as clear on how I want to do this today, aren't I? You can speak, read, and write. Right, AARAKOCRA. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this. I'm going to highlight this as a, let's come back to this and think about this a bit more. Bird-like beast. Bird-like. Yeah, bird-like beast. Fair enough. Yes, that's fair enough. Beast. Yeah, creature could go too far, right? There's a lot of beast monsters that are bird-like, so that makes sense. Very good. Yeah, I need to do more research on Orient. So this is the one language I'm tempted to remove and make it, you decide if you want to have it. I can't see why they'd give playable race a built-in spellcasting. Yeah, built-in spellcasting is, I think, complete crap. And starting at 3rd level, so you don't even get this straight off the bat. It's like a class feature. This looks like a class feature that's been rammed into an AARAKOCRA. So this is what I want to do, is I want you guys to brainstorm. If you had to build an AARAKOCRA and there was something related to their biology that should be part of them, what would that be? I think that's the question. Did I mean? Hashtag. Let's go here. What race or species abilities should the AARAKOCRA where are we? Make sure I get this right. AARAKOCRA have. Okay. Because I was a little bit at a loss as to what that might be. So let's do a little bit of research. I think we can stick with the dex. I think that seems reasonable. So let's keep the dex. And then the walking speed, I'm going to retain 20 feet rather than 30 feet. I know that will piss a few people off who are playing AARAKOCRA who find themselves in a dungeon, but you'll be at the back, as you probably should be, unless you're flying around, which you probably won't be in a dungeon. If we're not going to play the monster, then don't play the monster. An air elemental language. Okay. Let's go back to this. Windcaller. Starting at 3rd level, you can cast the Gust of Wind spell with this trait without requiring material components. Once you cast a spell with this trait, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. You can also cast a spell using any spell slot you have of 2nd level or higher. Da-di-da-di-da-di-da. Okay, let's have a look at the AARAKOCRA in 5e. Ruffled feathers. What have you got here? Ruffled feathers. You can make a display of flapping wings, which gives advantage on intimidation versus rodent-like creatures. Do you know, Fred? Yeah, we're going to replace Windcaller. I think Windcaller has to go, frankly. I mean, some of the races or species have magic tied to and connected to them in some way. I get it. I totally get it. I get that. I understand that. But this is one of those things where I'm like, I don't, it's not in the monster stat block. We just needed to give them something else because the AARAKOCRA just had flying 50 feet. So because they only got flying 50 feet, there's nothing else to give them. So we'll make them magic spellcasters. I think should depend on what kind they are. Most raptors keep to their own kind. Okay. Biological penalty must preen during short rest will lose half like Steve, you're funny. Okay, all right, let's have a look here. So see this call Windcaller. I'm highlighting this in red. That means it's got a very high likelihood that it's going to go. Okay, that it's not going to be retained. Let's have a look at the monster and actually see if there's anything that we can pull out from that other than ruffled feathers. That we could use. Well, right now it's got nothing special about its perception apparently. The monster stat block just suggests that it's got maybe training and I mean heck how they've worked out the perception for this creature I'm not entirely sure, based on the fact that it's a quarter challenge rating. Dive attack. Now, it's got a feature called dive attack. This might be one thing we can bring into the AARAKOCRA because the monster has the thing called dive attack. If the AARAKOCRA is flying and dives at least 30 feet straight toward a target and then hits target with a melee weapon attack, the attack deals an extra 3 or 1d6 damage to the target. I would be much more inclined to allow adding the dive attack. I'm also would be much more inclined to even consider eliminating attacks of opportunity and give them sort of like, you know how the owl has flyby attack. I'd be much more inclined to give them flyby attack because I think that would be much more in line with the AARAKOCRA. But it's also a combat thing, and we've already got a combat thing going on here. But the dive attack's not a stupid idea. I actually like the idea of allowing dive attack to replace Windcaller. That would be interesting in some way. So let's have a look at doing something like that. Yep. And I just got to rewrite it from the monster manual, which I'm going to pull up in a second and put an entry in for this, which is going to go right about here. All right, I'll go over here. I'll go to the site that will not be named. The name, no, don't name that site. What's it called again? AARAKOCRA. There, give me an AARAKOCRA. Give me a stat block for that. There it is. Bum bum bum. Ta-da! And there is our dive attack. And we will transfer that across to here. I'm honestly don't understand why they didn't just do this with the playable race the first time round. So when you fly and dive at least 30 feet straight toward a target and then hit it with a melee. Doesn't have to be a melee weapon. I don't think it needs to be a melee weapon. It could be the unarmed strike. Could get rid of the weapon nonsense. Melee weapon, attack, or unarmed strike. The attack deals an extra 1d6 damage to the target. I think that's it. Extra 1d6. Let's get rid of the 3 and let's just 1d6. Now that feels more like the actual monster that you're playing rather than something else. I feel like that's much more in line. We've now got 3 features. And I feel like Windcaller is almost ready to sort of be ditched. And I also want to pull across because although it was done in a bit of jest, I have an idea for Fred Huber's suggestion around the ruffled feathers. What is the name of the cantrip that is just a 10-foot shove? Why not give them a non-magical version of that? Well, I'm all for giving them a non-magical version of that. What is that, though? What are we talking about? What is the cantrip that gives you a 10-foot shove? I don't know what that is. What is the name of that cantrip? I don't know what the name of that cantrip is. If you guys can figure out the name of that cantrip, I will consider putting it in if it's going to work. I think all dragons should have flyby. Yes, I agree. All dragons should have flyby. The question is, should the AARAKOCRA have flyby? For me, adding in something like flyby to the AARAKOCRA is not very important because I plan to get rid of attacks of opportunity and opportunity attacks. I think they're garbage myself. I think they are a fallback to a misunderstanding of how combat works, and so I'm not a fan of including them in my own game. So why would I make mechanics that work with that? And since the monster stat block doesn't sort of talk about it, again, it's like it's another one of those things where I'm not honestly that interested in doing too much with it. So yeah, I mean we can add that into the dive attack and or give them just flyby as part of it. But I mean, is it that important? That's the question. I don't know that I believe it is. Anyway, okay, I've just transferred some information over, and we'll go back to here because we're not finished. We've still got a little bit of time left. I've got at least 10 minutes before I have to definitely be gone. I want to do a quick bit of research on languages so I can lock this down, and we will. So let's do this. Orion is what language? What are you talking to? The language of the elemental plane of air. It was also known as, okay. Well, AARAKOCRA is supposed to be from the plane of air. It would be unusual to have an AARAKOCRA out of the plane of air. And I would assume that if you are on the plane of the elemental plane of air, then everybody would know this language in the first place. This is like the common of the elemental planes, isn't it, for air? So retaining it, but also including bird-like beasts. I like the idea of including that, just because it's not a combat feature, which is always good, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so we're almost looking at seeing what... Now, I'm going to look at Windcaller one more time before I do anything with this. You can speak, read, and write one language of your choice. You can speak, read, and write... Additionally, you can speak, read, and write AARAKOCRA or and any type. And let's go there and speak any type of additionally, you can speak. Okay, so you can speak, read, and write one language of your choice. Additionally, you can in addition, you have AARAKOCRA and Ren. Okay. Okay, so you can speak. That's not a very good way of wording it, is it? It needs a clean up. It just definitely feels like a first copy. Yes, it's Gust. Hello, Murray Shack. How you doing? Call it a shove. You try to find it? Okay, you can try to find it. Win, Buffett, shove, read. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I'm still not convinced about any of that sort of thing. I just need to structure this last little bit here before I move on to the other piece. So because of your biology, because of the similarities in biology, because of the similarities in biology, you can speak to any type of bird-like beast. There we go. I think that's covered it. I think that works for me. It's a little bit more expanded than it was before, I suppose. I've added a little bit more. I've taken out the common. Okay, cool. We're happy with that. We're going to get rid of the summoning the birds thing, because that really don't think that's going to work for me. When you flap your wings together facing a creature with 5 feet of you, gives you the effect of the gust cantrip. See spell. I don't know. I'm really not keen on the idea of giving them the gust spell. I'm really not keen on it. Let me see. Spells. Magic items, races. Why can't I find spells? Oh, here we go. Spells. Here's spells. Is it called Gust? Is that what it's called? Gust. Cantrip. This is quite a complicated looking thing here. I'm not entirely sure that I'm absolutely convinced about it, but I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to make Gust fit Wind Caller without having it be a third level thing that you get, or it be a single use thing. It becomes a thing that is just something you can do over and over again, and we can remove the magical aspect of it by making it mechanical. I see where you're going with this. Okay, let me read the entry on the monster. You guys are starting to sell me on this. So Murray Shack and is it Nathaniel? Was it Nathaniel or was it Steve? I think it was Steve. I can't remember. There was a few people who were mentioning this. Who was it? Yeah, I can't see it. Fred Huber has mentioned it. Nathaniel has mentioned it. Okay, so I'm more sold on the idea of transferring gust over as something that you can use over and over again than I am with having it be this. But I want to read the monster entry to see if there's anything that we can pull from it before we do that. So the monster stat block says the following. AARAKOCRA range the howling Gaia, an endless storm of mighty winds and lashing rains that surrounds the tranquil realm of Aqua in the elemental plane of air. Making aerial patrols, these bird-like humanoids guard the windy borders of their home against invaders from the elemental plane of earth, such as gargoyles, their sworn enemies. Interesting. Enemies of the elemental evil. In the service to the wind, Dukes of Aquaria. Okay. AARAKOCRA scout the plane in search of temples of elemental evil. They spy on malign elemental creatures and then either take the fight to these creatures or report back to the Wind Dukes. On the material plane, the AARAKOCRA creates eyries atop the highest mountains, especially peaks near portals of the elemental plane of air. From such heights, AARAKOCRA watch for signs of elemental incursions, as well as for nascent threats of their home to their home plane. AARAKOCRA prefer to live their lives like the wind, unburdened and ever moving. Yet they watch over a region for years, if that's what it takes to guard against the incursions of the elemental evil. All right. AARAKOCRA have no concept of political boundaries or borders or property ownership, and the value of gems, gold, and other precious metals means little to AARAKOCRA. In their eyes, a creature should use what is necessary and then cast what is left on the wind for others to use. Searching for 7 shards. The Wind Dukes of Aquaria come from... Now, the more I read this, the more I think that the Gust cantrip would be a gift. It would be like a gift given to that particular race or species. I feel like it is a... I think we can build that in as an actual feature. I think that would actually make a lot more sense. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I think you've nailed it down pretty well. That the Gust cantrip is a gift of the Wind Dukes. I really like just a shove that can affect and doesn't need an attack roll. Well, I think you're definitely on the right track. I think that the idea is that we grant them this as a product of their duties to the Wind Dukes, because they are literally a race or species that endeavours to do the work of the Wind Dukes, isn't it? So that I actually can live with. What does Gust actually give you? You seize the air and compel it to create one of the following effects at a point you can see within range. One medium or small creature that you choose must succeed on a strength saving throw or be pushed up to 5 feet away from you. So there's basically your shove. You create a small blast of air capable of moving one object that is neither held nor carried and weighs no more than 5 pounds. The object is pushed up to 10 feet away from you. It isn't pushed with enough force to cause damage. Okay. You create a harmless sensory effect using air, such as causing leaves to rustle, wind to slam shutters shut, or your clothing to ripple in a breeze. So there's nothing overpowered about Gust. It is very simple, and it definitely feels like it would be one of the things that the Wind Dukes may actually grant the AARAKOCRA. I'm all for it. The question is, what do we call it? So I'm going to get rid of, we've got dive attack, we've got the talons, we've got the flight. I'm going to get rid of the ruffled feathers one because it was funny, but I'm going to take it out. We're not going to call this wind caller. I'm going to unread this, and we need to call it, it needs to be something else. We're going to put it here as summon gust. And do we need to worry about your spell casting ability for this thing? My idea is the wings being too long for flying and narrow passageways let them reach out to push someone, place it with. Yeah, no, I like the idea of just giving them the gust cantrip. This is one time where it actually feels like it makes sense. They're connected to the protection of the elemental plane of air. They're connected to the wind dukes. They are really kind of like servants in many respects, or connected to them in some way. So I actually think that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, doesn't need an attack. So let me just have a look. Saving. So there is a strength saving throw. So you would have to have some sort of thing built in to determine what you're going to use. Is it going to be intelligence, wisdom, or charisma? Is your spellcasting ability if for it when you cast gust? Okay, so here we go. So intelligence, wisdom, or charisma is your spellcasting ability for it when you cast gust. Gust with this trait. Choose when you select this race. Okay, so you can choose that. Then we're going to get rid of this. The wind dukes of the elemental plane of air have granted all AARAKOCRA. Do you know, the more I think about it, I think the AARAKOCRA monster should have access to the gust cantrip. That would make a lot of sense too. All AARAKOCRA magical access to the gust cantrip. And I think AARAKOCRA, there we go. Let's do this. Let's bold that. Let's take that up. Bring this up. And that means there's no, it's an infinite resource. There's no micromanagement going on here. It's not overpowered. It's got a little effect, and that's it. Honestly, I think that's not too bad. I'm actually pretty happy with that, the way it is. And we've got it done. We've got it done. I think that's it. I think that's nailed it down pretty well. I see you guys I can see what you guys are doing. You're talking about, like, you know, have them make a strength check, stuff, a contest of strength checks, blah blah blah. Gift of the wind. Gift of the wind. Summon gust. I think let's go. Okay, so gift. I don't want to call it gift of the wind. Let's call, but let's take your name that you've got there and just tinker a little bit. Gift Wind gift. Wind gift. Let's just go call it wind gift. I think that's, I don't want to get it too long. That's it. I think that's nailed it down. I think we got our AARAKOCRA. Languages, yeah, covers everything pretty much. Got a little bit of choice, not a lot, but languages in this, I'm not too sure the best way to approach it. I'm pretty happy with wind gift, how it's structured. Dive attack works in terms of, you know, how the monster manual monster works as well. Talons and peak are more in line with the monster from the monster manual. Flight is more in line again as well, but we have some restrictions, so it's clear how to adjudicate it for a game master. We've got our walking speed. I think that's it. I mean, it's not the sort of class you're going, playable race you're going to use all the time, but I think that gives you pretty much all the things that you require to make that work. Yeah, I think that's much more reasonable. Fortunately, we got it done in roughly about an hour, which is awesome because I'm supposed to be in a live stream very shortly with Wally DM, AJ Pickett, and Jake. So I need to get moving, don't I? Really do. I'm going to end this poll here. Gift the breaking wind. Wind gift. Gift of wind. It could even be called gift of wind, but wind gift, I've just put wind gift. You can fart uncontrollably whenever you like. Okay, do you think the AARAKOCRA playable race needs fixing for Dungeons and Dragons 5e? You know, now that I've actually had a closer look at it, I thought there were some problems, but I realized there are so many problems. So, yeah. Yes, 33%. Maybe 33%. No, 16%. Just watching, 16% out of 12 votes. Interesting. Very interesting. God, this new layout on a desktop for a live stream is completely throwing me, YouTube. I'm feeling intimidated. I'm going to tell you now. I'm running a live stream which is called, and you can't even see the title of the live stream now. Basically fixing, remastering the AARAKOCRA for Dungeons and Dragons 5e, and I have to compete with these things. 3 videos right underneath that I can see. One is Laura Bailey wants evil Imagonji critical role evil era merch. So like, do I really want to be competing with a video that's you can see that's about critical role? The next one is the Joker, the new official teaser for the Joker. Thanks, YouTube. Hell, I don't know about that. I'm really not happy. The next thing, Outlaws of Thunder, Junction pre-release, kit set, Magic the Gathering. I'm not intimidated by that Magic the Gathering card review. But the other two are pretty intimidating. Thanks very much, YouTube. Yeah. You know, Murray, look, I honestly, now that I see what we've done, I realize just how much of a mess it was. It wasn't completely clear. I knew there were some problems with it, but now that I've had a look at it, and I do appreciate everybody's saying, look, the Gus cantrip is the way to go. And I think you're right, because they're very much tied and connected to the Wind Dukes, and there's definitely a magical element to them because they are from the elemental plane of air. So I'm all for that. Let's make that work. Anyway, I'm going to have to get going because I'm supposed to be in a live stream in about 50 minutes. Oh yeah, that's right, another live stream. This happens to me. I am a sadist and like to make my life far more complicated than I really need to. So I'm going to be over on Wally DM's channel in about 50 minutes, maybe a little bit more than that, playing Mage the Ascension. It's a one-shot. I can't explain to you exactly what that is. All I can say is it's probably going to be very different to what you're used to. And I'll drop it into the chat here so you can see it. If you're interested in coming and hanging out, I will of course be hamming it up as I usually do, because that's really the only thing I'm really good at is just hamming it up. It's amazing that I've survived on YouTube as long as I have. Sarcasm, people. Sarcasm. Anyway, I'm going to get going. And I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening. I do appreciate it. I want to thank all of my patrons who support me on Patreon. I will eventually get around to putting these all up onto Patreon as first drafts. I just I haven't done it yet. Okay, I'm working towards it. There's been a lot to do. It will wind up there eventually. I'll let you know when it does. Any case, thank you for taking part in the poll. I really do appreciate that as well. And those people who were in chat and provided their feedback and their thoughts and their ideas, even if I didn't take on board the idea the way that you suggested it, you certainly did help drive the whole process for me. So Murray Shack, Nathaniel Woods, thank you very much. Fred Huber, as always, also a patron. Thank you for doing so. And Murray Shack is also a patron, if I'm pretty sure. I'm actually wondering if Nathaniel is too, but it's been a while since I checked the Patreon, so I'm not too sure. Steve Lee, thank you for hanging out. Derp is a patron, and thank you for hanging out and giving some feedback. I do appreciate it. Now that we're done with this, what am I doing next week? Same time, same bat channel. Epic boons, baby. Epic boons. Those epic boons aren't that epic. So yeah, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.